Before everything crumbled, life was simple, even predictable. I had a stable routine: work, home, and occasional nights out with my wife, Cheryl. We had been together for years, and although our marriage wasn't perfect, it was comfortable. We had our ups and downs, but we always seemed to find our way back to each other. But then, the changes started. Little by little, I noticed them, almost like a slow fog creeping in. The routines that once felt so stable began to feel empty. Cheryl seemed more distant. She was busy with her work at Enterprise Research and Development, and I felt more like a roommate than a husband. The spark in our relationship had faded, and I found myself wondering if this was all life had to offer. By day, I worked as a CPA, leading an audit team investigating financial missteps and contract mishandling. It was a job that required attention to detail, even if most people would call it dull. My current project involved Landmass Development Group, a company under investigation for contract mismanagement and possible fraud. My team and I were stationed on the 21st floor in a grand office, overseeing everything with a bird's-eye view of the city. One day, while on a break, I found myself staring out of my office window, glancing across the street where Cheryl's office was located. We hadn't really spoken much lately, and curiosity got the better of me. In the corner of my office sat an antique brass telescope, left by one of Landmass's partners, and I adjusted it to see if I could catch a glimpse of Cheryl at work. There she was, busy at her desk, and a wave of nostalgia hit me as I watched her. Then, my phone rang. It was Mandy from my team, inviting me to lunch. I declined, saying I had calls to make, but really, I was just lost in thought. After hanging up, I couldn't resist looking through the telescope again. But this time, something was different. Cheryl wasn't alone. A man I recognized from her office holiday party, Brad, was leaning close to her, too close. My stomach tightened as I watched them, each movement bringing my worst fears to life. I was still trying to process what I had seen when my phone rang again. This time, it was Cheryl. I struggled to sound normal, just wanting to tell her that I loved her, as if that would somehow make this gnawing feeling go away. But her response felt hollow, and she brushed me off with a distracted tone, saying she was busy. The moment I hung up, I watched her again through the telescope. Brad had closed the door, and they were sitting too close, his hand on her legs, inching upward while Cheryl's head leaned back, clearly at ease with his touch. My heart shattered as I watched her actions betray everything I thought we had. I sat back, numb, as the realization of her affair settled over me. After that day, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. My mind raced with questions I didn't want to ask, and answers I feared. I knew I couldn't face Cheryl until I understood what was happening. So, I turned to the people I trusted most, my audit team. They were more than colleagues, they were friends who'd seen me through tough times before. The next day, I explained the situation to them, barely holding myself together as I recounted what I'd seen. Adriana, Mandy, Red, Ian, and Jackie listened in silence, their faces mirroring my pain and anger. Then, without hesitation, they stepped up to help me find the truth, suggesting we use our skills to keep a close eye on Cheryl's activities without her knowing. We transformed my office into a war room of sorts, with monitors, security feeds, and files on Cheryl and her coworkers. The plan was set. Red, our tech expert, installed software that allowed us to monitor Cheryl's emails, her schedule, even the security cameras around her building. For days, we watched as she went through her usual work routine, but each glance and touch with her coworker Brad confirmed my worst suspicions. Soon enough, Cheryl wasn't just meeting with Brad, but with other men from her office as well. Each time I witnessed another betrayal, my heart broke a little more. Despite the pain, I couldn't tear myself away from watching. My team urged me to take breaks, to stop hurting myself by looking. Mandy even suggested I stay with her and her husband for a while, just to avoid going home and facing Cheryl. But I couldn't let it go. I had to know how far she'd gone, how many times she'd betrayed me, and why. Days turned into weeks, and the evidence piled up. Each day, we'd review the footage and emails, piecing together a web of lies that grew thicker with every discovery. Cheryl's affairs weren't a one-time mistake. They were calculated, recurring, even scheduled into her lunch breaks. Watching her so comfortable, so careless, with these men turned my pain into rage. Then came the final blow. One afternoon, I caught her meeting not just with Brad but with 3 other men from her office. Cheryl entertained them as if it was just another day, laughing and flirting like nothing else mattered. I couldn't believe the woman I'd loved, the woman I'd built a life with, could do this. At the sight, my emotions erupted. Mandy sat beside me, quietly holding my hand, as I struggled to make sense of it all. I had never felt so humiliated, so blindsided. In that moment, I knew our marriage was over. Cheryl had crossed a line, and I didn't see a way back from it. My team surrounded me, offering silent support as I sat there, stunned and broken. But as my anger grew, so did my need for closure. I didn't just want to leave, I wanted her to understand the pain she'd caused. So, with my team's help, I began to plan my next steps, determined to confront Cheryl in a way that would expose her lies and hold her accountable for every betrayal. On the day everything fell apart, I was prepared. My plan was simple but brutal. I had arranged for Cheryl to be served divorce papers at her office, right in the middle of one of her secret lunch meetings. I'd included evidence of her affairs, photos, timestamps, even videos that showed her with each of the men. My team was ready, monitoring the security cameras and my phone, prepared to capture every reaction. When noon arrived, I watched Cheryl through the telescope as she laughed and flirted with her lover, Brad, in her office. Just as they started getting close, the process server entered her office, a large envelope in hand. Cheryl and Brad scrambled, visibly startled as they fumbled to compose themselves. She looked at the envelope in shock, her face going pale as she realized what was inside. I called her office, wanting to be the one who broke the silence. She answered, her voice trembling. "Hello?" "Tell Brad to leave," I said coldly. She hesitated, then whispered to Brad to go, her voice desperate. When he resisted, she snapped, shouting at him to get out, telling him I knew everything. After he left, she sat down, her face twisted in disbelief and shame. "Cheryl," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You have one chance to fix this. First, quit your job. Second, file a sexual maltreatment suit against your supervisors. Yes, all of them. Third, I want the truth. Tell me why you did this." She stammered, "But Marty, I've worked so hard for this job. I'm so close to becoming the first female manager at Enterprise. You can't expect me to just throw it away." I didn't hesitate. Without another word, I pressed send on an email containing every piece of evidence we'd gathered. Photos, videos, emails. I'd send it to her entire office, her supervisors, and the wives of each man she had been with. The fallout would be instant and devastating. As I watched, Cheryl screamed and collapsed in her chair, realizing what I had done. She ran to the window, looking directly at the building where I stood, rage and horror twisting her features. My team gathered around me, each one giving a silent nod of support as I turned off the monitor, unable to watch her any longer. The silence in the room was overwhelming, broken only by the faint sounds of my team members packing up the equipment. They embraced me one by one, my friends who had stood by me through this nightmare, offering a moment of comfort in the aftermath of my marriage's destruction. That afternoon, I attended a final meeting with Landmass and delivered the audit results, my mind distant, still numb from the events that had unfolded. By the end of the day, I was drained, but a strange sense of relief settled over me. It was over. I had faced the truth, confronted Cheryl's betrayal, and finally felt free from the weight of her lies. In the days that followed, my life slowly returned to a new normal, though the emptiness lingered. I stayed with Mandy and her family while I arranged for a new place, needing some distance from the memories that haunted our old home. The house was put up for sale, and I began the process of finalizing the divorce. Cheryl tried to contact me a few times, but I ignored her messages, her pleas too little, too late. The office was a different place now. My team rallied around me, helping me refocus on work and reclaim some sense of purpose. Adriana, Red, Jackie, Ian, and Mandy each kept me grounded, filling the silence with reminders of who I was beyond Cheryl's betrayal. Their support was like a lifeline, pulling me out of the shadows. Gradually, with them by my side, I started to rebuild the parts of my life she had shattered. Months later, Cheryl left Boston for good. I heard she tried starting over in another city, but I didn't care to follow her story any further. For a long time, anger and regret weighed on me, but with therapy and the help of my friends, I worked through it. I forgave Cheryl, not to absolve her but to let go of the pain that had lingered like a shadow over my life. One quiet afternoon, I revisited the park where I used to sit and think about our future together. Now, I sat alone, feeling at peace for the first time in a long while. My life had taken a hard turn, but I'd found strength in my friends and in the new life I was beginning to build. Looking back, I realized I had lost not just a wife but the illusions I'd held onto for too long. I hadn't deserved the betrayal, but I was determined not to let it define me. Now, I had a clearer sense of what mattered and the resolve to move forward. If you found this story thought-provoking or helpful, make sure to check out my YouTube channel for more real-life stories about relationships, heartbreak, and the tough lessons we all have to learn. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more honest, unfiltered content.